Howdy, folks, and welcome to a special episode of It Came From Facebook. It is Ducati week here on Yami Noob, in case you haven't noticed, and it's to celebrate our giveaway Panigale V4. Head over to yaminoob.co. You have just a few days left to get entered to win. We launched this one as a 7-day only giveaway. We do these very rarely because honestly, it is very ill-advised to do such a short sweepstakes. But I thought, dude, it is summer of 2026. I want somebody to get the life-changing opportunity to get this Ducati and $2,500 cash. So head over to yaminoob.co, pick up some merch, become a member, do whatever you got to do to get entered to win because you're not going to want to miss it. Someone's going to get a spicy, brand spanking new Italian pasta rocket and $2,500 cash. Pretty sweet. So for Ducatis on Facebook Marketplace, you may think that you're only going to find the beautiful, the bespoke, the wonderful, but there are also some heinous and strange things Ducati owners do as well. Let's start off with a beautiful example. This is a 1997 Ducati 916 Monoposto, going for $19,250 with 6,355 miles on it. First of all, it is beautiful. I mean, the 916, like every time you look at one, you just never get tired of looking at it, do you? I mean, look how pretty this motorcycle is. Full trellis frame, single-sided swing arm, the OG triple spoke wheels from the 90s, undertail exhaust. It's just a gorgeous thing. Now, I want to point out, this rug and this door and this background looks very familiar to me, and that's because I think the gentleman who's selling this motorcycle also did a Gixxer 750 from the 80s that we saw a long time ago. If this person is watching this video, I want to be your friend. I think you have excellent interior design taste and excellent motorcycle taste. I would love to be your friend. Let's see a look at what they say. So, seller says, runs perfect. Inside fuel tank like new. Fresh Pirelli Super Corsa tires in 2025. No damage, never down. He's got emissions compliance stuff from California. Fast by Farachi exhaust. Never heard of that one. Heli bars mounted slightly higher and wider with heavy bar ends and soft grips almost makes riding comfortable. That's pretty funny to say. You know, we're almost there. And I can see right here those heli bar risers and the grips. It's the 916 is a bit torturous to ride, but this one, maybe if you just increase it a little bit, makes it a little nicer. Carbon fiber front and rear fenders, Corbin solo seat. That's nice, pretty comfortable. Stainless steel lines for front and rear brakes. All OEM parts in perfect condition, all bubble wrapped and labeled. Includes Ducati OEM rear stand and Pitbull rear stand adapter. So, a true gentleman of taste and culture having this motorcycle. It's pretty rare that you see 916s fall the fate of, like, you know, weird clapped out Gixxers or ZX10s or whatever. It seems like the people who want to own these own them very, very nicely. So Monoposto, what does that mean? It means that it's a single seater. Ducati sold these in the configuration of single seats or Biposto, which is 2 seats. So this one has a slightly lighter weight subframe and no rear seat, as you can see over here. And truthfully, the 916 rider rides alone, right? Let's take a look. Oh, the headlights look so clean, and just the little Ducati decal right there. Look at this guy's door and the rug, and doesn't this just look like don't you want to wake up and look at this? Don't you want this to be your vibe when you wake up? Man, wherever this guy is, I want to be you, man. And I think I see a 5-gallon jug of race gas back there too. And I think that's the Gixxer I talked about last time. You got that eagle eye, you know what I'm saying? So carbon fiber front fender. You got the suspension sorted over here. There's an Öhlins shock back here, the Farachi exhaust. You got the OE tail right here. This is not a tail tidy unit. You might want to put that on there right there. If you're already doing the heli bars and other stuff, you're like, you're not super precious about it. Showing off some of the internals here. We have the battery right over here. We got the stator, that classic, liquid cooled 916 motor. The 1997, was that 916 or was it 996? Someone let me know in the comments down below the displacement difference, because I believe they were interchangeable in the frame, because we actually test rode a 916 a while back for a video review, and the gentleman informed me that he had put the 996 engine in it. So a little bit of a difference in power output and torque, but overall the riding experience is going to be remarkably similar. This one's in pretty good condition. I wouldn't say like perfect showroom, but like decently good. Like you can see here, there's like some scuffing on this radiator tube over here. Like the tube leads into this housing right here. A little bit of scuffing over here too. You know, this is not museum quality, but you know, the stuff you're really going to look at here, the dash, the triple tree, you know, all the important components, they seem to be in really good shape. But I mean, this is about as clean as it could get for a 916. I think, what is this, 19,250? Yeah, I mean, maybe, right? Like, I think a lot of people look at an old 90s Ducati and they're like, how could it be so much money? But these are harder and harder to find in such great condition, especially with all the OE parts and to be in such beautiful shape. And I just feel like the older I'm getting, man, the older I just want to be an old guy who has cool stuff. That's all I want to do. I just want to have my family, big chillin', and I want to be that old guy with some cool stuff. I don't want a lot of cool stuff. I just want a couple cool things, and that's about it. That's all I really want. And I want to live in peace with my motorcycles. That's it. Sounds great to me. Moving on. All right, super vintage 1966 Ducati 350 Sebring Racer. Sebring? Who knows? $8,000. Seller says, I was told this racer came from Australia from the previous owner. This custom race bike was built around the 350 Sebring engine. Bike has been fully restored to racing specs and has new Avon race rubber, $1,000. It has been tested once at Willow Spring Raceway and is looking for a new home on the racetrack or in your living room. I like that you said living room because truthfully, I do think that's where this thing may be relegated to. So, 1966 Ducati 350. So first of all, that was before Ducati even introduced the L-twin architecture in the 750 SS in 1972 with Paul Smart at Imola. This was a single-cylinder motorcycle. So my knowledge on 60s racing bikes, very limited. That is not my forte. But from what I can see here, it's very bare bones, right? I mean, this might as well be a bicycle, right? Look at this geometry, look at the setup, look at the engine just sitting there. It is truly as minimal as it could possibly get. I mean, I don't think it can get much more minimal than this. I mean, even look at the stand to hold it up. I mean, that looks like an old-timey bicycle stand that they used to use. And it kind of tells me that, you know, this was so early in the development of motorcycling and what we thought bikes could be. You know, the wire spoke wheels, the drum brakes, that Avon rubber. This is truly vintage race bike stuff and not something that you are going to be piloting simply or reliably, let's say. This would absolutely be someone who would want to purchase it to have as a collector's piece. Maybe go vintage racing. That's a big thing that people do. It looks like you have the fairing stays right here to put on some sort of bubble fairing. But look at that single bar down here on the frame. I mean, it doesn't get much more simplistic than this, right? The rear end over here with a tiny little thing. I mean, this is just a total time capsule. Look at this. You know, it just reminds me of like, yeah, all those like 50s and 60s racers. And it's hard to imagine that this was like a pinnacle of a motorcycle at that time. You know, something ultra lightweight like this, simple single cylinder 350cc motor, obviously carbureted, no electronics, everything, you know, mechanical. Very, very cool motorcycle. But, you know, I do think probably relegated best to a museum piece. I think it has lost much of its relevancy as a bike that you would actually want to ride and do stuff with. You know, I kind of view the 80s to me is really the oldest people would be willing to go to still have a somewhat normal motorcycling experience. You know, by the 80s, 90s, the bikes were pretty much like, you know, we kind of figured out what a motorcycle should probably be like in terms of road handling, track performance, all that stuff. This was from such an ancient time that, you know, this thing has more in common with a bicycle than a motorcycle. In the modern configuration. But for an oddball, strange kind of experience, you know, I wouldn't put it past someone to, you know, own this and ride this and check it out. But a truly unique piece of history, though, being sold. And for $8,000, it's not that much for a pretty cool piece of history. All right, we have a bit of an oddball one here. A 2004 Ducati Multistrada, $5,000 with 32,000 miles. Somebody really rode and loved this thing. Seller says, extremely cool Multistrada for sale. It's been my daily for the last year or so, but I want to get back into Dynaland. You can just tell that that's a Californian, right? You can just tell by the vibe in the background. He's talking about Dynas. Of course, Stops fast and accelerates even faster. Great bike. Trades welcomed Harley or DRZ or DR650. So this tells me that, even a Multistrada, even a Ducati is not, immune to falling victim to a horrible squid-like fate. So somebody powder-coated the frame. Somebody put this crazy-ass fairing on here to kind of give it the great value desert sled vibe. This Multistrada, this was the original tall rounder. The Multistrada was one of the first bikes to feature this like tall suspension and 17s front and rear. So it's sort of like it's not really an adventure bike because it's not designed to go off-road, but what it is a touring style motorcycle that still has sport capable chops. It just happens to be kind of on stilts. And this one with the hard case attached to it, the luggage racks over here, the overall, let's say, jankiness of the motorcycle, the fact that it's endured for 32,000 miles is testament to the fact that those old, air-cooled two-valve, Desmo engines really were pretty reliable. People don't like it when I say that, but I've owned two of them now. I had one in the Scrambler, and now I have one in my Monster 1100S. There's not a lot that goes wrong with them. As long as you stay on top of the belts and the Desmo, they really just churn mileage. They're a very well-built, robust, reliable platform. And there's not a lot that goes wrong on these. This is a relatively simple mechanical motorcycle. So in terms of electronics, in terms of weird stuff like that, you're not going to run into issues. I think this one personally is a bit beat up. If you're looking for a Multistrada, you could do a whole heck of a lot better for $5,000. I've seen really nicely sorted Multistradas going for $5,000 or $6,000. This is a bit of a hodgepodge, weirdo, highly modified version that I would probably steer clear from. So, moving on. All right, next up is a 2004 Ducati 999 going for $7,999 with 4,500 miles on it. Honestly, people love to dog on these because they're the ugly Ducati. They came after the 916, and a lot of people did not like the way this looked. But you know what? The racetrack performance and the capabilities of this motorcycle could not be denied. It was much better than the 916. It was more capable, more refined, more everything, But I think it just represented this like big departure from beautiful 90s Ducati into like the 2000s where, Y2K energy, Hayabusas, crazy angular design, the Japanese, like there was so much taking over at that time. And I think Ducati unfortunately did fall a bit victim to that. But I think the designs aged pretty well into the modern era. So seller says 04 Ducati 999 runs and rides smooth, fresh oil change, fresh tires, fender eliminator, replacement mirrors, and turn signals. Fairings has been replaced, sadly Chinese made. Well, that's going to be a big ding for the value. But the bike looks incredible. Clean and clear title in hand. Please no lowballers. Please no trades. Serious buyers only. So it's a bit of a bummer that he put on the Chinesium fairings on it. But I gotta say, for Chinese fairings, it looks pretty good. It honestly looks pretty decent for Chinese fairings. So these had the kind of like more stylized undertail exhaust. The frame you can see is still highly derived on the 916, that really long trellis going all the way back to here. Bolted on subframe here though. The architecture for this is still very similar to the 916, but you can see it lost the single-sided swing arm. It lost a lot of the beautiful charm about it. But look at this. Radio mounted brakes, right? The 916 had axial mounted brakes. So I think the 999, it is an improvement, and it's just like, to me, it unfortunately ended up as kind of a weird, like, redheaded stepchild of Ducati superbikes that was maligned pretty unfairly. But I think now in hindsight, over 20 years later, I see an analog gauge, I see blue capped Olins, I see a beautiful triple tree, I see a motorcycle that has incredible hallmarks of what we want out of Ducati, even if the face is a little bit more stylized, even if it's a little bit funky. This gauge cluster here, reminds me of some of the goofy stuff that we saw in the Multistradas, and maybe a few missteps from Ducati's design. And really, I think that they, took a lot of that feedback over the mid-2000s, and, the 1098 they really came back around. They're like, okay, let's make beautiful motorcycles again. Let's make sure that they have performance, but they are also beautiful. And I think that's where we've kind of ended up with Ducati in the modern era, where they blend that beautiful design, but also incredible performance, which is what a Ducati needs to be. It can't just be pretty, and it can't just be a good performer. It has to be both. So the 999 has aged reasonably well. This one, particularly with the Chinese fairings and some of the other stuff, maybe not worth $8,000, and you just really command that much of a price for these old 999s. So I think this one is maybe a bit of a miss, but the platform itself is pretty good. All right, speaking of old school, we talked about how starting in the 80s and the early 90s, motorcycles were kind of developing into what we would consider to be proper motorcycles, and the Ducati 900 SS, the Supersport, is a very, very cool motorcycle. I believe this is the motorcycle that was penned so famously by Hunter S. Thompson, describing it as this sort of like vicious, maniacal, man-killing motorcycle. If only he could have lived long enough to see the insanity that we have now available to us. But the 900 Supersport, look at the frame, boys. Lord have mercy, that beautiful welded trellis frame. Is there anything like that? I don't think so. It's so pretty. So, seller says this is a 1995 Ducati Supersport 900 Classic. It has been garage kept and never driven hard, raced, or dropped. Features a Fast by Faraci exhaust system. That must be a reputable brand for some of these old school Ducatis. I've never heard of it personally. A black vinyl seat with removable rear cover, Brembo disc brakes, cast iron full floating rotors, cast iron like a frying pan. Underslug a rear caliper, piggyback monoshock, side stand, blah, blah, blah. Timing belts have only a few thousand miles on them. Both tires only have a few hundred miles on them. They're essentially new. So that's good. That means that you'd be able to buy this bike, assuming he has paperwork for that service. You'd be able to buy this and run it for a while, because the big ticket items on these old school Ducatis obviously are Desmos and belts. As long as those are in pretty good shape, then you can ride the bike for a pretty good amount of time. Both tires only have a few hundred miles. The stock headlight was replaced with dual racing lights before I purchased the bike. I have the original headlight and the exhaust pipes that will be included in the sale. He has all the service records, including records of the work he did himself. Oil and filter changes, batteries, and timing belts. Very cool. Let's take a look. So yeah, that front fairing, little front face is a bit different. I think these had the square headlight originally. My knowledge on the 900 Supersport is a bit fuzzy at the moment. But yeah, I mean, this has the frame here is so different from the 916. It's got this big, like, single piece trellis frame. The swing arm is this, like, it almost looks like a 90s Japanese bike with that, like, dual curved kind of look to it. The seat and the tank is this such a time capsule, man. And when you see stuff like this, you really start to remember, like, wow, the 90s were a long, long, long time ago. And it's weird because, like, I was born in 1992, and there's times that even I catch myself, like, thinking, like, oh, 98, 99, like, that's not that old. It's almost like stuff from the early 2000s, 90s, it's perpetually stuck in my brain as being, like, about 10 years ago, about 12, 15 years ago max. And then you remember, oh my God, like, 1999 was 27 years ago. We're getting close to, it was almost 30 years ago, And when you see how rudimentary some of this looks on this Ducati, that's where you really start to realize just how long ago this was. I mean, the build quality and the tooling and just everything we have nowadays is so much better than these old bikes. But, if you want that charming flavor and character, this is going to give it to you a lot. But it's really why I say that, stuff from the early to mid 2000s really splits the difference, because this is a really old bike and it's going to have old bike problems and weird stuff happen to it. Whereas, still, at some point in the next 10, 20 years, mid 2000s stuff is going to be just like really old and kind of junky. But I think we're still in that perfect blend right now where you get some of that stuff and it still works really, really well. But yeah, this is starting to get a little long in the tooth. But the 900 Supersport is just a classic, beautiful, cool Ducati. I mean, how can you not like it? So I thought this one was kind of neat. The Ducati Streetfighter 848 from 2013, going for $6,500 to 15,000 miles. The 848 Streetfighter, I think, has How do I phrase this? It's aged in a bit of a peculiar way because although it has, some really signature Ducati parts, that trellis frame, the single-sided swing arm, the 848cc motor is derived from the Ducati 848, which was the little brother to the 1098. Great engine, great chassis, everything cool about it. The Streetfighter in particular, to me, has not aged very well. I'm going to talk you through the design of this bike a little bit as I look over it, but let's take a look. So $6,500 is not much money for this bike. Let's see what they say. 2013 Streetfighter with a clean New Jersey title. Vehicle shows prior total loss history on Carfax. So that's probably why the value is quite low, to be honest. Bike's in excellent condition and looks almost new. Went down once, originally had minor cosmetic damage only, which has been fully repaired. No frame damage, no structural issues. The bike rides tight, smooth, and exactly how it should. Well, it's good to know, but I still, you never know. Kept indoors entirely. Well, I sure hope so. In New Jersey, you'd think it would freeze to death. Rizoma handlebar, mirrors, grips, blah blah blah. Olin steering damper. A lot of the stuff is just sparkles, like the Duca bike clutch slave, the slip-on exhaust, the Rizoma handlebars. That's all just like you sprinkled sparkles on top of it. What else? So Olin's sequential turn signals, approximately 15,000 miles, in need of Desmo service. So, all right. So we got several red flags here, right? The vehicle showing a prior total loss on the Carfax, and then in need of Desmo service. So that's probably why this thing is priced at $6,500. To be honest, it should be priced closer to $4,000 for that reason. And I know that sounds insane. You're saying, yeah, middleweight Ducati Streetfighter, cool sport bike, $4,000. Dude, Desmo service on these, especially at 15, you're going to do belt and Desmo. So you're talking probably a $3,000 bill to get all that done on this motorcycle, which is not a small bit of change. Like, that's a pretty big service bill for something pretty simple. And you're also probably going to find other stuff on this too. So let's take a look. Okay, 848 Evo. I like the gloves and the microfiber towel, wiping it down with the depth of field on the camera, making that primo look. But I gotta say, I despise these off gold parts on this bike, dude. Like, this makes the thing look so cheap and crappy and weird because it doesn't match what color the wheel is. Like, look, that's slightly off. This should probably just be black or silver or something more neutral, because the bike already, unfortunately, has the fork is a slightly different color from the wheels. That's not the same color, so it already looks kind of weird. And, you've put on all these ridiculous, like, Duca bike red things and grips and mirrors, and, you start to do too much to the bike. I mean, look at this cockpit here with the steering damper and the ridiculous Duca bike things and the handlebar. It just all looks kind of bad. And the mirrors and the grips, it's like you've done too much. You've done too much. I am a big believer in restraint. If you're trying to modify your motorcycle, you want one farkle, maybe two, maybe one or two little fun things you like to look at. It's just too much on this. So the fact that this bike shows previous loss, the fact that it needs Desmos, I think it's a red flag, and you should probably just skip it. Probably shouldn't get this motorcycle. Moving on. All right, next up is a vintage that I, of course, am intimately familiar with. It's a 2012 Ducati Monster going for, $14,995 at 3,000 miles on the clock. So, as many of you know, I have a Ducati Monster 1100S. I recently picked it up, really enjoying it. Lovely motorcycle. This is a 2012 Ducati Monster 796. So, this is the same generation as my motorcycle. You can see it has the same frame and subframe, just slightly smaller engine. They made a small Monster and a big Monster back in the day. In 2012, I believe they had the Monster 1100 Evo, which changed the exhaust. You lost the dry clutch. To me, I like the 1100S a little bit better. The 796 is just a smaller version of it. It actually has the same 803cc air-cooled L-twin motor found in the Scramblers. So, seller says, I don't know why it's in all caps. We're not going to yell. 2012 Ducati Monster 796, fully loaded and the perfect weekend blaster for a discriminating buyer. Weekend blaster, Jesus. Fast, fun, and stunning. Have to drop the price for a move. $5,000 below the total I put into it. You tell me this bike is 20 grand worth of parts and nonsense? I don't think this bike retailed for much more than 10 when it was new back in 2012, right? This particular year is extra special as it was the last year that Ducati was a privately held Italian company before it was purchased by Audi Group, and this is why I have kept it. Okay, game recognized game. That's also why I bought my 1100S. I rarely have it outside, and at least 5 cars literally stopped to tell me how beautiful it is while I was taking photos for this ad. Now, when people say stuff like that, I don't really care, because what it tells me, I don't care what the masses think of a motorcycle. Most people have atrocious taste in film, music, movies, art. So to me, honestly, if a bunch of people keep telling me something looks cool, it probably doesn't look cool, right? Because that's not how that works. 3,012 meticulously cared for miles and just about every possible carbon, billet, aluminum, and specialty performance part available, upgrade available. All aftermarket parts installed by Ducati technicians. So there's your cost right there. You got Ducati technicians installing Farkles for you at shop labor hours. I mean, Jesus Christ. All right, well, let's take a look at the motorcycle, right? I mean, holy Farkle, right? Like, Jesus Christ. I mean, what is this brake caliper? Do we get a close-up on that? I think this photo is about as close as we're going to get. Why on God's green earth have you done that? Is that a painted Brembo caliper? Did you remove this and paint it this god-awful, like, bright banana yellow? We just got every single Farkle under the sun. A heat-wrapped exhaust for some reason? Why? You have a you got a little Duca bike like oil filter protector thing. You've got carbon this, you got the, oh my God, this is a mess. This is an absolute mess. I do see that we have Öhlins suspension. At least there's a sticker on the fork over here and an Öhlins shock out back. So that's kind of neat. A giant carbon swing arm cover for some reason. You do have the Termi exhaust. Those look nice. There's just way too much going on with this motorcycle, man. Like, way too much. You're doing way too much with this. And I'll tell you, man, this bike is not worth anywhere near 15 grand. Not anywhere near 15 grand. The 796 doesn't command the same premium as the 1100. I paid right around $9,300 for my completely bone stock Monster 1100S. And truthfully, I overpaid a little bit because I was at a dealership. That bike is probably worth about $7,000, but I really wanted it, so I paid for it. 15 for this is absurd. That is completely absurd. What are we talking about? This bike is like 8 grand? I don't know, something like that. You're never gonna get 15 for this. That's completely absurd. It makes no sense. And it's not my fault or problem that you spent $20,000 on Farkles and then getting people to install the Farkles on there for you. There's too much garbage on this motorcycle. There's just a bunch of garbage on this. Like all these little parts and features and stuff. None of this makes any damn sense to me. It's not required at all. Also, 3,012 meticulously cared for miles. I would have to see if the belts were done, because the belts, it's not just mileage, it's time. The belts will degrade over time. They won't just necessarily have to be worn in through the actual engine. So I'd want to see service on if the bike has the proper belts on it, because my 1100S, for example, the belts were pretty smoked, even though the mileage was not that high. So yeah, this one, crazy price, doesn't make any damn sense. Moving on. All right, last bike for today's video is a rare and strange bird. It's a 1982 Ducati MHR 900 going for $9,500 with 43,000 miles on it. Somebody really rode and loved this motorcycle. So 1982 Ducati MHR 900. MHR stands for Mike Halewood Replica, number DM900R 903177. Not sure what that means. Probably the number of the special edition or whatever. Weathered custom paint makes for an appealing vintage look. I love this guy must be in some sort of advertising or marketing. That's really funny. Enjoy it as is, or a great starting point for your own bevel drive build. Kickstart only, starts easily and runs and rides okay. Good power, suspension, brakes. Speedo reports 69,000 kilometers, 43,000 miles. TMU, Clear, Washington title. So I don't know much about these. I obviously know that Mike Halewood was a successful Ducati racer, a successful racer in general. I did not know that these were bevel drive. There's a lot of interesting features the closer you look on this motorcycle. You can obviously tell big air-cooled twin. I I don't know if this was a like total factory replica bike that was sold from Ducati or if this was modified to be made this way. But I mean, look at the clip-ons are about as narrow as it gets, right? And this really looks like proper old school race bike stuff. It just kind of looks dangerous just looking at it, doesn't it? This looks like a bit of a death trap just kind of looking at the motorcycle. It looks like it's going to do some weird, crazy stuff on the side of the tire. 43,000 miles is pretty nuts for this machine. Why is that sprocket so tiny? That's a tiny, tiny little sprocket. It's also on the opposite side of what you'd normally find. That's kind of strange. Maybe they did that back in the 80s. But I mean, 1982, boys, that's a 44-year-old motorcycle. That's really pushing it for, you know, the kind of vintage, old school vibes. But I like the selling point that it's a vintage paint, something a little more weathered if you want it. The center stand's a nice touch. I mean, you just pop that thing up and start doing a little bit of work on it yourself right over there on the side of the road, which inevitably you will probably need to. It's just the older the bikes are, the more problems and weird stuff they're going to have happen to them. And it's not just the, you know, the simple stuff. People are like, oh, you know, the battery or this and that. Old bikes have all kinds of weird issues. Stuff that you just really, you know, don't want to take care of or deal with. That is a crazy mounting for the front brakes too. Why are they up here? Is that factory? Is that stock? It's just the more you look at this motorcycle, the more questions start to emerge. I mean, what is that brake placement? Normally they're back here. Why is it up there? So a cool replica race bike, $9,500. You know, it's so old that at some point the value just starts to kind of, you're kind of like shrugging your shoulders like, I have no idea what it should cost. But a pretty cool bike nonetheless. Pretty interesting. So boys, that's going to wrap up our fun little Facebook episode for today. Some really cool vintage motorcycles, some awesome Ducatis up for grabs over here. And hope you guys had some fun looking through these with me. And of course, the giveaway Panigale is on the website right now. If you want to win a Panigale V4 and $2,500 cash, head over to the website. Do not miss your chance. And this is a 1-week giveaway. So get in while you can, because if you don't, it's going to be gone, and then we're on to the next one. Thanks so much for checking out today's video. I appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later.